with a bang here. Only 2 more slates left for the solo shot here for the 2020 MLB season, and thankfully they have gifted us with a fun slate with a couple of young aces who are pretty nasty on tonight's slate. And I think that both are very much in play for daily fantasy as long as the weather in Atlanta does hold out. So I think this shapes up to be a pretty fun slate. Just 2 left, so let's celebrate. Dive on in and get you set for Thursday night. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Here to break down Thursday's 6-game main slate. Lock is at 7-10 for tonight. And despite there being just 6 games, I still think we got pretty good options across the board for this slate. So, again, a good way to close up shop on the 2020 season. But it will not be closing up shop on all things here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, because we will still have golf, NASCAR, UFC, and NFL, of course, NFL 2 times per week. UFC podcast for UFC 253 already posted with Austin Swain. He breaks down the 2 main fights for Saturday night and also discuss his favorite plays on FanDuel for the slate. NFL podcast coming up later today with myself and Brandon Gadullo. We are recording that live on YouTube at 10 a.m., posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after. So despite the fact there are just 2 more solo shots left for the 2020 season, still make sure you're subscribed. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipe, or pike. I never know which one is which. Regardless, it's coming towards your earbuds the next couple of weeks. So make sure you are subscribed there to get it all as it goes live. As mentioned, there are some weather concerns for tonight in Atlanta. Pretty good chance of rain there for the Braves and the Marlins. Looks like it might be pretty hairy, so I would be sure to check that one later because there is a pitcher I like a lot there. So hopefully the weather does hold off, but we got other options. So if it doesn't look too good, we can still attack this slate in a pretty fun way, but hopefully they are lenient towards us and let us get that game in. Our FanDuel Podcast Network Listener League is back for week number 3 in the NFL. It is a rake-free contest, so FanDuel gets not a single penny from you out of this. All the entries go right back to you, the listeners. It's a $5 entry fee with a maximum of 3 entries per person. There are just 400 seats, so make sure you get yourself entered early to ensure your spot. To get yourself entered, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That's FanDuel.com/league/listener league. FanDuel.com/league/listener league. You can also get a link to it by looking at the podcast landing page for the Week 2 NFL Recap podcast or the Week 3 NFL Preview podcast once it is posted. So get the direct link there, or just go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. $5 entry, 3 max, no rake. Can't get a whole lot better than that. Pitching preview for this Thursday main slate. Corbin Burns is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel. He checks in at $10,600, followed by Walker Buehler coming off the injured list. He is $10,400. Ian Anderson is $9,900. Lance Lynn does not fit in the young ace category, but he's $9,500. Then Pablo Lopez, Kwang Yun Kim, and Chris Bubich are the others at $8,000 or higher. And it's been fun to see Corbin Burns finally get unleashed for this year. He's at the top of the salary pool, but he's also at the top of my list for pitching for tonight. Burns started this year in the rotation, made 1 start, then went back to the bullpen for a bit, but Burns has been unreal ever since they put him back in the rotation, and I think that he has to be the top starter on the board for tonight, again, despite the fact we've got some good options available. Burns has made 7 starts since he rejoined the rotation. It's a pretty good sample, and his sample in those his numbers in those sample really, really good. A 2.72 skill interactive ERA for Burns with a 38% strikeout rate. That's disgusting. His walk rate is 7%, so he's had great plate discipline numbers. And that's super valuable for daily fantasy because strikeouts are the first thing we care about. Burns has gotten those. But he's also done this with good batted ball numbers. Burns has allowed just a 26% hard hit rate in this time with a 51% ground ball rate. I talk a lot about Brandon Woodruff on this show because he combines strikeouts with batted ball numbers. Burns does that too. So it's a lethal combination and one we should seek out in daily fantasy. With some Milwaukee pitchers, we have seen pretty big home road splits. Like, again, specifically Woodruff is a guy where I will use him pretty heavily at home, not as much on the road. It hasn't been a major issue for Burns this year. He's made 4 starts on the road in this 7-start sample, and He's allowed just 4 earned runs total in those 4 starts. He's had plenty of strikeouts too. So I'm not as concerned with Burns when it comes to the home road splits. He's facing the Cardinals tonight. They did just see him, which is kind of annoying, but Burns struck out 10 of the 23 batters he faced. Overall, against righties this year, the Cardinals have a 94 WRC plus with a 24% strikeout rate. The peripherals say we should buy into what Burns has been doing, so I'm going to do exactly that. I think that he is legitimate, so he is my top starter on tonight's slate. It can be risky and it can be a little scary to buy into guys with small samples, but with Burns, I think it's legit, so I am willing to go there. The other young ace on the slate, not Walker Buehler. Yes, he is a young ace, but he's not going to be a recommendation for DFS. We'll talk more about him and things to watch. Instead, the guy I want to use is Ian Anderson. He is facing the Marlins at home. As mentioned, we do need to take a look at the weather here because as of this morning on Thursday, recording around 9 o'clock in the morning, doesn't look too good. But if we turn back in the afternoon, see that the rain has cleared out, Anderson in a good spot. The Marlins are not a bad offense. I've actually stacked them twice this week, but I think they're one we can target with good pitchers because their WRC plus against righties is 95 with a 24% strikeout rate. So they're an offense we can use. We can also use pitchers who are facing them. If they're good enough, Anderson is. He's up to 5 starts so far in the majors, and in that time, Anderson has a 3.92 skill interactive ERA with a 32% strikeout rate. Those are really good numbers. Anderson's at 8 strikeouts in 3 of the 5 starts he has made, and those have all come in his road starts, which is very interesting because to me, I think that means he could be even better in this spot because pitchers tend to do better at home. We see a bump if you look like league wide for starters, even in the COVID era with no fans. Home starting pitchers have had a strikeout rate about 2 percentage points higher than starters on the road. So Anderson may get a bump here because he is at home, an advantage he hasn't had all that often so far this year. That's a big reason that I like Anderson for tonight. The reason I have him below Burns is because of walks. Anderson has a 13% walk rate across his 5 starts. He has walked at least 3 batters in 5 straight starts, and he did that against the Marlins, the same team he's facing tonight, back on September 7th. That led to Anderson getting bounced after just 3 innings, and that one was at home. So the walks are enough for me to put Anderson below Burns for tonight. They are not enough, though, for me to avoid him entirely. I think that he is a solid number 2 option after Burns. The strikeouts are there. The matchup, good enough. So as long as the weather allows us to, I'm going to put Anderson second, but Burns definitively, for me, the number 1 starter for tonight. As mentioned, we'll go through Walker Buehler in things to watch. If you want a lower salaried option, I think it's a good night to just take advantage of a good matchup and use Christian Javier. Javier is someone who was recently in the bullpen, and that's kind of a turnoff. It could have been a turnoff with Burns too earlier in the year, but what it shows is that the team doesn't value him as much as we may, and the teams know these guys better than we do, so that's always a concern. But the matchup is elite for Javier. He's facing the Rangers, who have just a 67 WRC plus against righties with a 25% strikeout rate. That can help lift middling pitchers to elite daily fantasy outings, and Javier is in that realm. As a starter, he's been fine. He has a 24% strikeout rate. That'll definitely work. He does walk too many guys, and he lets up too many fly balls. So that's why, despite the matchup, I'm still pushing myself towards the higher salary pitchers. I think, again, Burns and Anderson, the top 2 guys, but even Lance Lynn in the same game at $9,500, I would rank him higher than Javier as well. But Javier does have a path to a ceiling because of the matchup and because of his strikeout ability. The team occasionally lets him go deep in games. He was at 93 and 94 pitches in the 2 starts before he got demoted to the bullpen. He had 6 strikeouts across just 17 batters faced his last time out. So, again, Rangers are a good matchup. Javier is $7,400. He will let you load up on the Dodgers, who I do like for stacking, and there is an advantage and an allure to that. So if you want to spend down, Javier is your best option. My personal preference is to just focus on the higher salary guys here. Again, starting with Burns, but then going Anderson, likely some Lance Lynn as well, but Javier, among the lower salary guys below $9,000, would be my number 1 pitcher for tonight. Speaking of the Dodgers, again, they're kind of a reason why you may want to spend down on Javier. We haven't gotten to stack them in a while. They've either not been on the main slate, they've been in tougher matchups, bad parks, whatever it may be. We can get back on the train tonight against Mike Fiers. The Dodgers are my number one stack here on the slate. And Fiers hasn't been too bad this year. His ERA is 4.67. That is down from or up from where it was last year, but it's not something we need to stack against. But things change when you're facing an offense this good. Fiers hasn't had that task much this year. He's made 10 total starts in 2020, and 40% of those starts have come against teams in the bottom 3 in WRC plus against righties. He has had to face the Padres, so it hasn't always been super easy for Fiers, but that many games against the Rangers and the Rockies can make things look a whole lot better than they actually are. It's also not as if we've seen Fiers be a shutdown guy. A 4.67 ERA is fine, but it's not great. Comes with a 5.37 skill interactive ERA. Fiers is allowing balls in play in 80% of the plate appearances against him. So a good way to rack up upside is by targeting guys like this. Batted balls are value. They're currency in MLB DFS. You want as many of them on your team as you can possibly get. Fiers will give you those. The batted ball numbers against Fiers aren't all that bad, but again, we can worry less about rates when we get a lot of volume of balls in play. That's what we get here. So I think that because Fiers is facing a tougher matchup than he's seen for most of this year, because the Dodgers are the Dodgers, I'm willing to stack them. The Dodgers against righties, a 42% hard hit rate with a 40% fly ball rate. So the Dodgers easily my number one stack of the night. I really hope they keep batting Will Smith higher in the order. He's been batting in the top 6 for a bit now, and I will take even just the top 7. Like, if they drop him down to 7, cool. I don't care. I'm still going to use him because against righties, Smith has a 40% hard hit rate with a 48% fly ball rate and a 15% strikeout rate. He is an elite hitter. People don't tend to use catchers, and now he's the same position as Max Muncy, which should further limit the popularity. So I would say just use both. Use Muncy and Will Smith. I think they're awesome. Smith is an integral part of a Dodger stack for me, assuming he's in the lineup. So let's keep Will Smith in the top 7 spots in the order, and we can party once lineups come out later tonight. If you need some lower salary hitters, because like Birds is 10-6, the Dodgers are not cheap, you are going to need some salary savers. I would turn to the Royals here. They're facing Michael Fulmer, and we talked about this in his most recent start, but Fulmer making some incremental gains. And that's what you'd hope to see because he was a fun, good pitcher back in the day. But even the incremental gains with Fulmer still allow us to stack against him. A key to the gains for Fulmer seems to have been upping his sinker usage. He's been leaning more on that pitch over his past 6 starts, and that's helped bring his hard hit rate down to 33%. But Fulmer is still letting up too many balls in play. He has a 17% strikeout rate with a 10% walk rate, which puts his Sierra up to 5.34, which is a second highest on the main slate. Fulmer's still not going deep in games. He's going about 3 innings or so. So we do have to make sure we're not just looking at Fulmer whenever he starts. The active roster bullpen for the Tigers is a 5.13 ERA. That's nothing to be too scared of. In the past 6 starts that Fulmer has made, so again, looking at the sample where that sinker usage has been up, they've allowed an average of 5.5 runs per game. They allowed 14 runs in one of those. They've allowed 5 or more runs in, I believe, 4 of the 6 games. So we're getting access to middle relievers. That's always a good thing. Fulmer probably not going to be all that effective when he's out there. So I think the Royals do grade out well from a stacking perspective, even when we account for the fact that Fulmer isn't going to be out there all that long. So the Royals, to me, are a really good option. And they've got good players within this stack. We talked about this last night on the Q&A stream. Alberto Mondesi is starting to hit well again, which is really fun for DFS and really scary for people who don't like Alberto Mondesi because in September, Mondesi has a 224 isolated slugging percentage. His hard hit rate is 41% with a 41% fly ball rate. That is good as a hitter. It doesn't factor in the speed that he brings to the table. He's back to having 2 sources of upside as opposed to just the one because he was still stealing bases earlier this year, wasn't hitting well, but now he's hitting well. He's still just $2,900, so Alberto Mondesi is among the best plays on Thursday night slate. Salvador Perez cranking dingers left and right. Jorge Soler is back. Maikel Franco jumped up to 5th in the order last night against a righty. Franchi Cordero, if he bats higher than 8th, I'd be willing to use. He had a double dong last night, so maybe he does slide up in the order, but they just got a decent number of dudes in here. So I think there are a lot of mid-range bats. I would say pepper that mid-range. Maybe you jump down to Cordero at his salary and soak in all those long balls. But I do think the Royals are a good salary saver for tonight. Every time I stack the Royals, though, I will be including Mondesi within that stack. For the third option, we're going to go to the Boston Red Sox, and I haven't stacked them in a while. It's not a great lineup right now. Got a 102 WRC plus against righties, so that's not super inspiring, but I think they could have some success here tonight. They're facing Alex Cobb, and Cobb is another guy who isn't a bad pitcher. He's just someone who lets up a lot of balls in play, and that is exactly what we want. Cobb has made 9 total starts so far this year. He has a 17% strikeout rate with an 8% walk rate. Means he's allowing a ball in play 75% of the time. It's a really good number for this specific slate. Now, Cobb does get ground balls, but he also allows a 40% hard hit rate, which is the highest for any pitcher on this slate. I'm also intrigued because of what Cobb has done recently. He was on the injured list at the end of August, and in the 2 starts since he's come back, he has been throwing his splitter less often. He let up 5 earned runs in one, including 3 home runs in one of those starts. Pretty solid in the other, but he did let up a bunch of hard contact. Cobb is at his best when he can lean on that splitter, and he's not doing that right now. So the ground balls can be annoying, and the Red Sox are not great, but I'm still good with stacking them here against Alex Cobb. Alex Verdugo is $3,000, batting at the top of the lineup. He's had good results this year. Not as many fly balls as you'd like, but I think he's kind of like a David Peralta type batter where you will still use him despite the lack of fly balls because he can hit the ball hard, doesn't strike out. So I would say that's the way I view Verdugo, is if you're okay using David Peralta, you like in the past, I think that Verdugo is kind of in the same mold. Jackie Bradley Jr. hit 5th last night. Not really into him, but I'm willing to go there if it helps you get to Rafael Devers and JD Martinez. I know Martinez has been bad this year, but his batted ball numbers are still pretty good. So I would say I'd be willing to get there. Jackie Bradley Jr., if he allows you to get there, that's okay. But if you don't need him, I would be okay skipping over him. So Verdugo, really good option. Devers, Martinez, and see what else you need from that Red Sox stack. Let's finish up things here with things to watch. Talking about Walker Buehler making his return tonight. And I'm probably not using him, but he is worth discussing here because there are a couple of factors at play. The first one is coming off the injured list due to a blister issue, which means you do have to be a bit lower on him because blister issues tend to linger, which is always concerning. That's especially true because the Dodgers already have clinched the top seed in the National League, so they don't have a lot of incentive to go super hard here. Buehler did throw 90 pitches in a simulated game on Saturday, so there's a shot he goes decently deep. It's just not a risk I am all that good inheriting, so I will pass here, but he's not entirely off the board. Just probably not a play I'm going to use personally for tonight. I am okay with risk, but I've got good alternatives, so I'm okay missing out on Buehler if he does go nuts for tonight. 2 other stacks I like here are the Tigers and the Orioles. The Tigers are fun because they're good against lefties with a 136 WRC plus, and they're facing Chris Bubik. He has allowed a 38% hard hit rate this year, which is the highest number on the slate. Actually, no, check that. I think that Cobb has the highest hard hit rate on the slate, but Bubik is up there. He hasn't had bad results, but this is also one of the tougher matchups he has had because the Tigers are so good against lefties. Victor Reyes, 2 sources of upside there, similar to Mondesi. I can get behind Heimer Candelario, Nico Goodrum too. Just not a lot of big names, but they do get the job done. So the Royals, my preferred value stack, but the Tigers are an option as well. Also could consider the Orioles facing Martin Perez. He's similar to Alex Cobb, where he allows a good number of balls in play. There's not the best batted ball numbers against him. That'll work on this specific slate. We saw Austin Hayes move up in the lineup a couple of days ago. I do like that for $2,500 if you need to save more salary. Paveleka weirdly has good batted ball numbers overall this year. I'm not sure if I should trust it, but he's, I think, $2,200 playing shortstop. It could work if you want to get up to Mookie Betts or Cody Bellinger, guys like that. It could work. So I'm not opposed to the Orioles, but I rank them behind the Tigers and I rank them behind the Royals among the lower salary plays for tonight. So should be a pretty easy slate to get to. Corbin Burns or Ian Anderson, depending on whether they're, and also stack the Dodgers with them because of the value we have elsewhere. That is all the time that we have for today here on the Solo Shot. But as mentioned, coming up later today, 10 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, we've got our Week 3 NFL DFS preview podcast with myself and Brandon Gadula, breaking down the main slate, talking through the potential value running backs and the two big games to stack on that slate. That is at 10 a.m. on YouTube and also on the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed immediately after. So make sure you're subscribed in both places to get notifications as that content is available. And if you like what you hear, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for today. Back again tomorrow for the final Solo Shot of the season. We'll talk to you then. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.